Hi everyone, in this episode we'll go through 8 to 10 top areas across Australia, different states, different cities, which are the worst to buy in right now, worst to invest in. And if you're looking to buy your first home, your next home to live in, and you have this mindset that I want it to rise so I can pull equity out and start or grow my investment portfolio further, or I want to live there for a while and then make it an investment property, this episode will also be relevant to you guys, but especially investors. If you buy in one of these areas, you could be making a massive mistake. There's new analysis that's identified where building is going to happen the most, new data from realestate.com.au, and also new announcements from the government, state government, local government since the start of 2025. This sort of information is really hard to come by. It requires a lot of crawling different council websites, state government announcements. I put it all in this one episode for you guys, so you can buy the right types of locations and not buy lemons. If you get value out of this episode, hit the subscribe button. There's more than 2,000 episodes just like it right here, and give it a like. That will help increase its reach to many other people. My name's PK, and I help people build passive income through the Property Investment Accelerator using data without needing a $15,000 buyer's agent every single time. In this channel, we expose the reality about the Australian economy, the housing market, and financial happiness. Let's go. So I'm going to go through different states: WA, Queensland, New South Wales, South Australia, Victoria, and I'm going to identify the worst locations to buy in. Now, if you've already bought in these locations, don't fear, you must have already made a lot of money. In fact, just because I'm mentioning these as the worst locations does not mean that they will not increase in value, but rather over the long term, 5 to 10 to 15 year horizon, these will underperform, most likely, barring any other changes, than other better locations. So the question becomes opportunity cost. If I buy in one of these now, sure, my money might increase by 20-30% over the next 5 years, so definitely not super bad. But in the same time frame, if you buy in the right locations, guided by the same data, you could have made 100% or even 150% capital gains in the next 5 or so years. So it all comes down to opportunity cost. State governments, local councils make announcements, change their planning every single year as well. So these locations might change next year. New locations might come up that are even worse, and vice versa. But we can do the best with the information that we have at present. So let's go. Worst locations to buy in. So the first one here is a place called Roseworthy, which is on the far north of Adelaide. Changes to South Australia's environmental and food production areas will unlock up to 61,000 new homes across Roseworthy, Two Wells, Murray Bridge, Victor Harbour, and Goolwa. Now, what happens, and this is a theme across this episode, is supply is the enemy of growth. Property markets work on a supply-demand dynamic. Where supply rises and demand doesn't, that means prices fall. Where supply drops and demand stays the same, prices increase. Where demand increases, supply doesn't keep up, prices rise. And where supply is the same but demand drops, prices fall. So most of these locations that I'm sharing today are locations where demand is pretty strong. It's not that demand is weak, but supply is likely to completely outclass it, outmaneuver demand, and completely supersede it. And that is the risk. Despite at the moment being in a national housing boom where right now house prices are rising at a clip of more than 10.5% annualized, despite that, over the long term, medium to long term, 5 to 10 to 15 years, all these new houses that will be built in these locations will mean that when demand does soften out, which at some point it does, it goes through cycles, there will be a glut of supply, too much supply, and your house price may be stagnant for a very, very long time. So I know Gawler has been a terrific place to buy in recent times, but because Roseworthy and also this place called Concordia is so close to it, this whole area, despite it continuing to do well, even in the short term from this point onwards, over the medium to long term, these areas may experience more subdued price conditions. Two Wells was also as part of this new rezoning from the South Australian government. This is just northwest of Anglevale, where there is also an incredible amount of new houses already being built, and very close to an investment hotspot of Elizabeth. So those of you who have bought in these areas, I know that you've done very well, and congratulations to you. But the risk is that holding these properties for the next 10 to 15 years may mean that there is a huge opportunity cost. It might mean that it's a better idea to take equity and buy elsewhere, or maybe find the right time to sell in these areas and use that money elsewhere. This is not financial advice. This is just me giving you some food for thought so you can make educated decisions. Also included in that 61,000 new homes figure was Murray Bridge. Of course, not too many investors here, I'm sure, but that is also a location to avoid, and also Victor Harbour on the coast south of Adelaide, which is right next to Goolwa, which also is zoned for this new housing supply. Now let's turn our attention to Perth, and North Perth is forecast for another 50,000 homes, particularly around the East Wanneroo development area, including Wanneroo, Mariganyup, Jandabup, and Pinjar. So this is the first one around Wanneroo. Now, so many of you, including many of my clients, have made an absolute killing, doubling their house prices in the last 2 or 3 or 4 years in these areas, and they've done very well. Many of them have used that to build significant portfolios of 3, 4, 5, 6 properties in other parts of Australia. But those of you who are looking to enter the market now may not be the best time, despite Perth experiencing a second wave. Remember, markets within markets. Just because Perth continues to boom doesn't mean all parts of Perth will boom. In fact, right now, there are locations in Perth that are actually flatlining because they've hit their affordability ceiling. The affordability is not necessarily the issue in north part of Perth here, but just a lot of supply coming to market. Just northeast of Wanneroo as well. Going further up, just east of Tapping and Banksia Grove in Mariganyup, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, a lot of green space that is now being rezoned for housing, detached housing. And just south of that in Jandabup as well. A lot of these areas, if I go to satellite view right now, which were formerly farmland, have been rezoned because of the chronic housing shortage that Perth is experiencing. State government, local councils work together, quite rightly in my opinion, to release new land for housing. And so over the next 5, 10, 15 years, we're likely to see in all these areas just mentioned, including Pinjar, which is back northeast of Banksia Grove, really nice family-friendly area Banksia Grove is. All these areas are expected to see more than 50,000 new homes come to market in the next 5 to 15 years. So does that mean that you have to panic? No. Does that mean that those of you who have houses already around here should panic and sell? No. But does that mean that if you're looking to buy in right now, that you should think twice, 3 times, 4 times before, let's say, your buyer's agent gets you in there because they don't know this information? Probably yes. Broadmeadow in New South Wales is next. It's expected to see 20,000 new homes. This is in Newcastle. If I go to satellite view, you can see that actually this is already a pretty built out area, a lot of residential housing here. But what they've done here is they've rezoned it from what in Queensland we would call low density residential to medium or high density, which in layman's language just means more apartment blocks, apartment towers, and attached dwellings. So probably nothing wrong with buying a detached home here. In fact, in 15 years time, you might be making a killing because a developer knocks on your door and says, actually, I'll pay you $3 million for something you bought for $800,000 because now I can build 5 stories on this. That's a different strategy entirely. But if you're buying a unit here, I would be very careful because there's about to be a flood of units coming onto this area in Newcastle, Broadmeadow that is, in the next 5 to 15 years. We don't know exactly the time frame. All this information has been gleaned from state government announcements and local council announcements. They're not always very precise, but I'm giving you the best that I can. In Sydney, you have a place called Burwood, especially Burwood North in New South Wales. Here in Sydney is expected to see another 15,000 new homes. And when I say homes, you might think, hey, PK, how can you possibly build new homes? I don't see any farmland or green acreages here that have nothing on them. Well, that's not the point. The point here is that they are being rezoned from low density residential to much, much, much higher density. So that means a lot of these houses may be knocked over. They may be built up to the sky, maybe 5 stories, 6 stories high, plus minus. I don't know exactly the details. I haven't released them all yet, but over the next 15 years, this area, especially on the north side, will be completely changed. So if you're tempted to buy an apartment around these areas, including Strathfield's a very prestigious suburb, right? I understand the area very well, but there's so much more supply coming onto market. So you have to be very careful. Remember, it doesn't matter how prestigious or expensive the area is right now. There are apartments that were selling in the Olympic Games time in Sydney in the CBD for 500,000 that you could buy right now for like 600,000. Okay, and what's more prestigious than Sydney CBD in a sense, right? It doesn't matter how prestigious the location is, it's how much supply is coming on market. And of course, since the Olympic Games in Sydney, there have been tens of thousands of new units built. So supply is the enemy of price growth. Be careful in buying around these areas, Five Docks, Strathfield, and Burwood North specifically, an apartment type of dwelling. And the similar sort of commentary is applicable for Woollahra. This is on the way to Bondi Beach in the eastern suburbs of Sydney. Here they are rezoning once again because there's a chronic housing shortage. So it is not the case that if buying a freestanding house will do you in. That is not what I'm saying, but rather be careful in buying an apartment here because there will likely be a lot of demolition activity as this rezoning pans out over the next 10-15 years. And a lot of this area will become very, very high density. A lot of supply of attached dwellings, apartments, cookie cutter units will be coming to the market. It is expected there will be 10,000 new units coming in Woollahra and surrounds. So be careful on that point. Coming to Victoria, you've got this northern suburb of Beveridge and just north of that Wallen. I know a lot of dodgy house and land package type buyers agents have been investing heavily here for their clients over the last 4 years, registered land, and then it takes 2 to 3 years to build. There's schedule delays, there's budget delays. Not only that, but they normally overpay for them. You've seen the ad on your Facebook feed, you've seen the ads on YouTube. Anytime someone is selling you a brand new house and land package, the alarm bells, the red flags should go off, especially in a place like Beveridge, where they are anticipating, the state government of Victoria is 15,000 new homes. That's just Beveridge. That doesn't even include Wallen, which is another huge number. So think about it. If you're buying a house and land package, being sold the depreciation story, being sold the low maintenance story. By the way, new houses are not low maintenance. Construction quality is very poor, not like it used to be 40 years ago. If you're sold that story, let's say you're a new migrant, you have this bias towards new houses, you're being sold the dream, and it's not going to work out for you because supply is the enemy of growth, and these areas are going to be oversupplied, too many choices for buyers, therefore prices will not go up. That is very likely to happen even despite currently house prices booming on average across Australia. There will be a huge opportunity cost. Now turning back to Sydney, even though I'm very, very bullish on the western corridor going out to Penrith over the long term, in St. Mary's specifically, if you're buying a unit or looking to buy a unit in the next 5 or so years, that is likely to underperform. And by unit, I mean not like a townhouse or a villa with land, but a genuine unit, on the second story, third story, fourth story, etc. Because this whole area of around St. Mary's is being rezoned. They're looking to build another 9,300 apartments or homes in and around St. Mary's over the next 10 to 15 years. So once again, too much supply, prices don't grow as much as you want them to. And then last one, going to Brisbane, you have this Redland City area, which includes Alexandra Hills, Capalaba, Mount Cotton, Redland Bay, Victoria Point, really beautiful part of the world. Here, they are also anticipating another 8,000 homes over the next 10 to 15 years. Honestly, this is probably not such a bad investment compared to the others because 8,000 is not as high as the other numbers. And also there is a lot of demand in Brisbane right now. And so over such a long time frame, this kind of supply may be absorbed. But once again, I've included it in this worst suburbs list because that is still a huge quantum. And if something were to happen to demand, then a lot of the supply would be left unsold and prices would stagnate for a long time. I really don't want you guys to make bad investment decisions. Some of what I said, if you come back and watch it in 5 or 10 years' time, you might be pleasantly surprised to think that, hey, actually, you know what? Alexandra Hills actually did pretty well. I don't know what PK was talking about. But the point of this episode is compare it to the best performing areas. I'm not talking about price-wise. I'm talking about capital growth-wise. You're leaving a lot of money on the table. That is what's likely to happen in the next 5 to 15 years if you buy in these areas. But only time will tell. These are fundamentals that normally do apply in the property market. The last 5 years have been a little bit of an exception because there have been bankruptcies amongst builders. There have been huge bottlenecks getting materials, construction materials into Australia. There have been lockdowns, so the supply story has been really handicapped. You know, getting houses out of the ground in Australia has been akin to trying to make a house, build a house with both hands tied behind your back. I think that story is changing, but if those unique circumstances once again play out and houses, despite being approved, just can't get out of the ground, then these locations may not be so bad. But if we follow long-term fundamentals, these are objectively the worst locations you can buy that will have a huge opportunity cost relative to the best locations that you can buy. That, of course, I go over with laser precision for my clients in the Property Investment Accelerator. My name's PK. Hopefully you got value. Hit the subscribe button. Share this episode with someone who really needs to hear it. Maybe they agree, disagree. Doesn't matter. Education is wealth. The most important real estate is the 6 inches between your two ears. Invest in that because no one else will. That is how you get rich. That is how you get wealthy, by investing in yourself. I'll leave links below so you can do that, to the Property Investment Accelerator, and also to my free Facebook group with 70,000 people in there, Australian Property Mastery with PK, and also my podcast to truly level up, Oz Property Mastery with PK, on Spotify and all platforms. My name's PK. Thank you so much. Hit subscribe. I'll see you next time. Catch you later.